Hello. I know it's been an incredibly long period of time since I have recorded a video. It's been over a year, I think. So I've been busy recovering from depression. But in the meantime, I've had some interesting dreams. Now, I know there are a lot of Christians out there who are like, I don't want to hear about dreams. All I want to hear about is, chapter and verse or, personal experiences and stuff like that. And I'd like to preface this by saying that I am in the Lord and I pray and I think about God and I talk to Jesus and stuff like that. And I do this all day. Okay, it's constantly on my mind, especially nowadays with all the prophetic stuff that's happening in Israel and everything with the American embassy being moved to Jerusalem and all that good stuff, which it's really exciting, isn't it? No matter which position you take on it, it's very interesting and it'll be neat to see what happens. So anyway, I'm sidetracked. The first dream that I want to talk about now, this is one of the reasons why I think the adversary has been attacking me, as if he ever stops. But no, he's really been paying more attention to me than I'd like. Because one thing is I noticed that my dreams kind of turned darker more recently. And despite me being in a pretty decent mood, okay? And this all started happening right about the time that I finished my first edit of the novel. All right. The novel has, a lot of really amazing religious implications to it. And so it's just like, it's a really fair, balanced argument, and everything like that. So naturally, Satan's going to be a little touchy about, the Christian perspective of this. And I have a feeling he's trying to intimidate me or just derail me, do as much damage as he can to me before I have a chance to publish this. And we're getting pretty close, okay? I know I'm babbling, but really there is a point. So the two dreams that I want to talk about, the first one was not exactly an attack, and then the second one was definitely an attack. Okay, the first one, I was living in a really nice warm area, somewhat like Southern California, but not quite so much, like palm trees and stuff like that. So it was warm, but you know what? It was more like Scottsdale, Arizona. That kind of an atmosphere is really nice and warm and it's very pretty and there's, like lots of wildlife, okay? And so anyway, so I'm walking around and I'm coming into the house through the back door when I look down and there's a scorpion on the ground. And I'm like, ew. And then as I kind of turn around and start looking, I notice there are scorpions all over the ground. And it was very intimidating. And I was just like, okay, no scorpions. No scorpions, right? So I had to try to find a way to get into the house without stepping on the scorpions. And as I was walking, I was kind of working my way around them, stepping around them, being very careful because they were the small kind. And the small ones are the most dangerous. They have the most potent venom. At least that's what I understand. I could easily be wrong. The little tiny, like, tan colored ones. Those are, ugh, yeah. And anyway, so, I'm trying to work my way around when I look down and I see this newspaper that's on the ground, and the newspaper has an article that says that there's been a sudden influx of this really dangerous scourge. And I knew without reading it, because I was just reading the title of the article, I knew that they were talking about scorpions. And so I was just like, okay, so we're being attacked by a horde of scorpions, So I'm like, wow, this is really gross, and I hope the authorities take care of it soon. So I go inside the house, and, and I'm in the living room and I'm sitting on the couch. I was in the house where you're supposed to be safe. You're supposed to be safe from, you know, dangerous things like that in your own house. And I looked around and there were little scorpions all over the place. I was trying to get off of the couch so that I could get away from the scorpions and go get help. And there were scorpions all over the floor and everything like that. And so, I finally got to where I was up and away from them, and I was trying to work my way around so that I could go tell my dad, because dad would take care of, the insect, get rid of it. I guess, I don't know if scorpions are technically insects. It doesn't matter. They're gross. I was working my way around to try to get to my dad when I noticed that there was a scorpion and it was on the ground, on the floor, and it was covered in this foaming clear liquid, and it was kind of doing this, like it was trying to move, it was trying to walk, but it was slipping around on the floor and it couldn't get traction because it was covered with this stuff that I understood was an insecticide, so it was a poison and it wasn't killing it. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, dad had treated, the situation with chemistry and it wasn't killing the scorpion." And so I climbed into my bed because you're supposed to be safer in bed. And I'm laying down and I lay down on my back and I'm covered with a blanket. And then I heard a thump and felt it. And it was something that landed kind of on my chest but down low, so near my belly. And it was a very small, it kind of sounded like if somebody threw a pebble at you and it landed on like your pillowcase or something like that. There was a little, you know. And so I looked and there was this gigantic, I mean, massive grasshopper. It wasn't green, it was a tan color, and it was like maybe 2.5 inches long, and it had landed on my chest and it was staring at me. And in one of its hind legs, it was carrying a scorpion. So it had literally picked the scorpion up and hopped up onto the bed so that the scorpion could get to me. This thing was helping the scorpion. And I mean, I don't look at grasshoppers or locusts or whatever you want to call them and think that they're not an ominous presence like a scorpion or a snake or something like that. So that was really weird. And I woke up and I was thinking about it and I was just like, what kind of a grasshopper was that? And I looked it up, and generally people, they either refer to the locust as a locust or a grasshopper. But to my understanding, though there are different species, I mean, not species, though there are different types of the same insect, they're all the same thing, locust or grasshopper. So the huge tan, sandstone colored grasshopper carried a tiny little scorpion up onto my bed. Ugh. So that was one of the dreams, and I was just like, that was the most eerie, odd, icky dream I've had in a long time. So I shook it off and I was just like, it's just a dream. Some time goes by, and this was the night before last. I had recently learned some things about some music, and certain artists who had made pacts with the adversary, the devil, so that they could become famous, great big musicians. And I was not comfortable with having their music in my catalog on my computer, so I went and I deleted them. And it was either that night or the next night. I don't remember exactly which day it was that I, deleted those videos, but it was either that night or the next night that I was dreaming. And it was just one of the, like how dreams are strange and everything. And, you're just wandering around doing stuff and your focus shifts, and it was just a dream. And then what happened was it shifted to the scenery. So instead of being outdoors as I had been, it was kind of a camping dream. I was outside, we were camping, and all of a sudden I'm inside this house that I don't recognize. I've never been in this house. And it's in the middle of the night, all the lights are off, and so it's kind of hard to see. And so I'm walking past, you know how in older houses, you walk up the stairwell and there's like a little rail box that goes around the stairwell so that you don't walk off and fall in. Well, I was walking around the face of the stairs and then coming around this way. And the further to my left that I walked, there was a little orb of bright light. And it would come straight up from the stairs. It would come straight up and peek up at me. And so I walked back and it went down. So I walked to left and it came back up. So it was reacting to me directly. And I was just, like I kind of dismissed it. I'm like, yeah, it's weird, whatever. And so I walked directly to my left and turned away from it, and suddenly I'm lying on my back in my bed covered with lots of heavy blankets. And the blankets were so heavy that it felt like lead. Like they were made of lead, and lead. If you picked it up, it's super heavy. Heavier than iron. It's just powerful stuff. And it's, I was writhing around and I was trying to free myself and like trying to get up, and something was pinning me on my back. And I was like, oh, I'm being attacked, like I'm being attacked by a demon, and I'm writhing and I'm like, God help me. God help me. God help me. And it would not let me go. And I was like, Jesus help me. Jesus help me, please. Jesus help me. And nothing, it kept pressing me down. And then I felt this skin sensation, and it felt kind of like I don't know how to explain it, like if your arm had no bones and it was like slithering, and it slid up I'm sorry guys, but it got graphic. It slid up my thigh and then along my belly. And I was wearing a nightgown, and so it was like, ew, it was touching me, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then, when I started panicking, I screamed out. And I don't know why I said it like this, because we say something different when we actually do it when we're conscious, but this is how it came out in the dream. I command the blood of Christ, and it let me go. And I had the blankets up, and and I said, and I was saying over me, and this black fog mist thing, the demon that had been attacking me, was hovering over me. And even though it had no eyes, I couldn't see a face, I could tell that it was looming over me and staring me in the eye like it was trying to intimidate me, and it was working. And so, I had said, I plead the blood of Christ, and suddenly there it is, and I said, over me. And I was pulling the blankets up to cover my face when I woke up. And I was sweating. And I was steaming hot. I sleep in the basement of the house because it's cool down here. And it was scorching hot under those blankets. I'm sure a lot of that was because of the anxiety. And I was like, Jesus, oh God, Jesus, protect me. And, I was rejecting evil, and I was praying to God and stuff like that and saying, "Protect me, Lord," and don't let it touch me. Don't let it touch me. Just keep it away from me. That kind of thing. And it really felt urgent. Now, I'm not easily afraid of anything. Like, I had a dream about a demon last year, and it was shaped like kind of like a centaur, only it was really tiny. So it was more like an imp, and it had black eyes that were really big and round. There's a marsupial that has really big eyes. It kind of looked like that. And and it was just, it was staring at me through the back door, and it was looking up at me, and I noticed it, and I was like, ew. So I went to move to where there was a wall between me and the thing, and it was down at the base of the yard because it couldn't come back up onto the yard. It couldn't come up into the grass because we had consecrated the property. And so when I moved, it moved over, and it was trying to, it was trying to look up at me and make eye contact with me, right? It was the weirdest thing ever. And my dad was sitting there at the computer desk, and I said, "Dad, look at this. Do you see this?" And he's like, "What? Look at what? What are you talking about?" And I said, "Look down there." And he saw it, and he was like, "Whoa." And so Mom comes downstairs, and I'm like, "Mom, look at this thing out in the backyard." And when I said that, um, we were out in the backyard trying to chase it off and trying to get rid of it. And it was afraid of this, because obviously we have authority over them in the name of Christ, right? So in the name of Jesus, we have authority. And I'm trying to chase this thing off the property. And Mom and Dad have their Bibles, and they're reading from the Bibles and following me around the yard. And I'm saying, "Jesus, Jesus," and I'm holding my hand up. And I'm saying it like the televangelist, "Jesus, Jesus," like that, all powerful. And I could really feel the strength in me, and I'm like, getting rid of this thing. And it was panicking, so it picked up my puppy and kind of like holding it hostage, and it's like, "You won't hurt me because I've got your baby. I've got your puppy with me." And so I picked up a stick, and I was just like, "Let my puppy go." It was one of those things where you're protecting this innocent, and let it go. And we're chanting and talking, praising Jesus and everything like that. And it had no choice but to drop the puppy and run. Okay, so I've had a series of these demon dreams, and dark forces dreams converging on me, and they're attacking, but they can never actually hurt me. Like, they're trying, but it's not working. Recently, what I did is I got on to Zab's intercessory group, which it's if you're not a member, it's on Facebook, and it is a good place to go. You can become a member of the group if they approve you. And then what you do is you can ask for prayers, or if somebody needs a prayer, you go and you pray for them. They'll say, "Oh, my mother's in the hospital," or whatever, "She has cancer. Please pray for her." And then we all get together and pray. And it's wonderful, okay? And I asked my brothers and sisters on the intercessory group, what is it which may cause the adversary to attack you most viciously, to send demons after you, to really start focusing on you? And there were a few answers that really struck home with me. One of which is to distract you from doing holy work, to keep you from getting closer to God than you already are, because you're moving toward God. And then another one was, this lady told me that sometimes they do it when there's somebody in your life who needs you to help them to be moral support in Christianity, and to help with the word and everything like that, to help keep this person focused as they're moving through a difficult time. And I've got that going on too. So the book, me getting closer to Jesus, and my person of great importance, who needs my help, getting through a very tough time, devastating, life changing time. So, I mean, there are so many reasons we can be attacked. Almost everybody who recommended anything told me to, pray before bed, and when I wake up in the morning, put on the full armor of God, and ask that Jesus clear my space of any hostile, beings, energies, spells, anything like that, asking Jesus and the angels to protect me and cleanse the house and the property and my mind, body, and soul, and put on the full armor of God before I go to bed. So I did that last night and I slept like a baby. Okay. So just remember that if you have the Holy Spirit within you, you can combat evil, no matter how serious the affliction becomes. So, I really wanted to talk to you guys about that and really tell you all about this, and to encourage you to pray every night and every morning. And I've got to get this out before I forget it. I just had this incredibly vivid, lucid dream, and it was like just a few seconds, really. But I dreamt that I was the observer. I wasn't actually physically there, but I was observing. And there was this garden, and it was old, and it was made of, like, there was wood and stone, but it was covered with almost adobe, like, it was just soil covered it, and then that soil was hardened, and it was painted with roses and pink flowers and leaves and stuff like that. So it was a garden, and it was screened in. So that flimsy material that screen doors are sometimes made of, not the metallic one, but the thin fibrous one, and you could just easily put your finger and push real hard and pop a hole in it. It was, the screen was that stuff. And I kind of followed this man in. The screen door opened, and this man walked in, and he was elderly. He was probably in his late 60s. We'll just say that. So not quite elderly, but you know what I mean. It was elderly enough. And he had like the gray salt and pepper hair, and he was dressed nicely. I would say business casual, and he had this very man about the world kind of an air. He was very smooth and calm and relaxed, and everything was just very nice, and he was being very pleasant. And there was this woman who was inside, and that was her garden. She lived there. This was her place. It was her home. And there were other people around and stuff like that, but this was just like, it was kind of like, hey, come over to my house and we'll hang out in the garden and have lunch, kind of a thing. He came in, and she closed the screen door, and she didn't have to lock it or anything. She just closed the screen door, and so they're walking along, and oh, it's a nice day, and there's this, this older lady in there, and it's her garden. And she was older than he. She was probably in her late 70s. Okay, she was pretty and she looked like very healthy and plump, but her skin was very, very wrinkled. Like she spent a lot of time out in the sun, and she was very, very tan, but she was not Caucasian. She was one of the mid-tone skin races. She very well may have been Middle Eastern. I don't know, but she had her hair up in this bun. She had mostly white hair. She didn't look unkempt or disheveled or distressed in any way, shape, or form, and she was just wearing this really nice outfit. And so she's like, she's just welcoming him in, and then I didn't hear anything they said. But she was just talking, and they were chatting and smiling and just having a nice time walking along this path. And I had a view of them I was in the center of the garden looking toward the screen door where he had entered. And there were sounds of rockets and jet aircraft and machine gun fire and rapid fire. We'll just say that it was rapid fire. And it was just like full-on war outside the garden. And you could tell that people were shooting at the garden, but then the bullets would hit the garden and just kind of bounce off of it as if they were trivial. And this tiny flimsy material was just just like, it was bouncing those bullets back out into, the desert. And yes, this was in the desert. There was a lot of sand around and it was really hot, but inside the garden you didn't notice any of that. It was just very nice and clean and beautiful in there. It was very beautiful. Lots of flowers and plants and trees and just, it was very alive. And she turned around. This woman, after the man wandered off into the garden, she turned around and she kind of looked out over the battlefield. And she just got sad. And this is where it gets weird. It was almost as if the world we were all in had become maybe the size of a basketball, but I didn't see this part. I'm just trying to explain what she was holding up in her hands. She had both of her hands together in a cup, and she was holding up a piece of the earth, which is the location that we were all in. And she looked up at the sky with this piece of the earth in her hands, and it was just a symbol of the piece of the earth because we were literally standing in the earth. So there's no way, but I hope you can get, I'm sorry if that's not a sufficient, I don't know how to explain it, but I could just see the piece of the world there. And she looked up at the sky, and you could tell she was praying to God, and she said, "Please be a place of peace." And it was just, it was such a sweet, sincere prayer. And when she looked up, like, first of all, it was daytime down on the ground. But when she looked up, you could see the heavens. You could see the arm of the Milky Way overhead, so you could look up at our arm of the Milky Way. And then you could see Andromeda, and there were there were stars, and they all seemed to be dancing over the top of the earth. And it was just that was the strangest dream, but beautiful at the same time. And last night was when the US, France, and England, when we all got together and attacked Syria. So I think it was very profound, and and obviously the whole thing was just so amazing. But it was her prayer to God, please be a place of peace. And she was begging the Middle East, holding it up, please be a place of peace. She was safe, But it was, you could tell it broke her heart. She was very sad. So I don't know. That was amazing. Yeah. Thanks for watching. And share this with lots of people so they can hear about it too. All right. Bye-bye.